All right, so welcome everyone, and I'd like to introduce myself and the course that I've presented. So my name is Sam Shankland. I'm a professional chess player and professional chess trainer as well. I both play and write material and teach lessons, all that stuff for a living. Last year I was US champion, and I've been as high as number 22 in the world, and I'm giving this course on my second book, Small Steps to Success. I've already done one, Small Steps to Giant Improvement, which I will shamelessly promote here by telling you if you haven't done that one yet. It's not necessarily a prerequisite for this course, but I do think it will help you, and both in terms of helping understand how I think as well as some of the topics at hand. So for Small Steps 1 and Small Steps 2, I mostly wrote these books for selfish purposes because I wanted to investigate a topic myself that I thought I would like to understand better. Certainly for Small Steps 1, I think it helped my career enormously. I've been in a bit of a slump this year. I've fallen a long way, but hopefully I'll be back. And I'm hopeful that Small Steps 2 will help in that regard as well. So just to show what I mean, Small Steps 1 was all about pawns not wanting to move backwards, making sure that you don't advance your pawns in detrimental ways and that will ruin your position, and provoking your opponent's pawns forward in ways that wouldn't help you. And I was finding that a lot of these themes were coming up in the games I was playing over the course of the next year. In particular, the one I think was most notable was the game that won me the US Championship over a Wonder Liang in 2018. So I reached quite a nice position here, and I played this very nice, very strong move, knight b3. So I'm threatening knight c5, and black can certainly stop it by playing b6. Now he did, and this was a mistake. But this has provoked the b pawn forward in a way that has loosened the light squares around his king that my pieces are very happy about. And after knight c1, king b7, knight d3, here, he played knight b8 first, and then king b7. In any case, here, black is looking to play a6 to trap my bishop, and I played knight b4. I played this move knowing full well my knight was insecure here, and black could play a5. And then I will have played my knight right back to d3. Here we have the same position that we had just a second ago, but instead of playing a move for myself, I essentially played the move a7 to a5 for my opponent, which forces his pawn forward in a way that ruins his position even further for two reasons. One is it loses control of the b5 square, which would fit right into chapter 7 of my previous book, that you can provoke your opponent's pawn forward in a way that forces them to lose control of a key square. And now my bishop will stand on b5 for the rest of the game, where it dominates this knight, and it cannot be challenged. Secondly, by playing a5, black has made a hook, and I have the potential to play b4 someday to blast open his queenside. A second ago here, while black's position is miserable, it's not like I'm just going to checkmate him. I don't have enough firepower to do that. But following a5, knight d3, it becomes very reasonable to believe that b4 will open up black's king enough that he will get mated. And this would have fit into chapter 10 of my book as well. So basically, I was finding that the themes that I was writing about were coming up in my games, subsequent games after I wrote the book, and I was understanding them more clearly and more easily finding better moves. Similarly, my opponent could have done himself a favor earlier on by not playing b6 to weaken the square. He should have instead played a6, and here I thought that after takes, the computer gives knight c5, but I wanted to play knight c1, and white's a bit better. But the point remains the same, was that writing this book really helped me understand chess better. Moving on to the actual topic that I'm discussing this time, or actually first, I should give one small retraction. I certainly stand by the work that I did in Small Steps 1. I think it was a good book. I put a lot of effort into it, and I think I learned a lot and explained a lot pretty well, and it received a lot of good reviews. Nonetheless, whenever an author writes a book or publishes some kind of material, and there is a mistake in there, and they find out about the mistake, it is their duty to correct it. So before we move on to this one, I would like to just speak briefly about the mistake I made. This position is a technical draw because white has no way to kick black's king out of this f8 area without stalemating him, for instance, after something like bishop e5, king g8, bishop d6. Cannot kick the king away because of king f7 stalemate. There's just nothing to do. And I wrote in that here, the reason this is, and that you should note that white would be winning if the entire position was shifted one file to the left. For example, something like this. All the pieces moved over one square. I have since been made aware that would still be a draw in a very, very painful manner that I will talk about later on in the course, where I trolled Peter's fiddler. With that in mind, consider yourself warned, this position would still be a draw with the king on e6, king on e8, pawn on g6, pawn on g7, and bishop on a2. So, The book that I wrote this time is all about passed pawns. And while passed pawns might not sound quite as relevant as general pawn play, I would disagree. Almost every decisive game that is played that is not decided by a direct tactic or a direct attack will feature passed pawns in some way. Sure, sometimes you'll play an exchange Slav or an exchange French, swap all the pieces, draw and move 20 and nothing happened. But at least for decisive games, which is the ones that people should be caring about trying to make, both winning them and preventing losses, passed pawns play a critical role in almost every single one that you'll have. Unless, again, it's decided by a direct tactic where material is lost or something. And how you handle passed pawns is very important. I think passed pawns have been criminally underrepresented in chess literature and in media and whatnot. And it's very important to understand how they work. And there's a lot more to it than just shoving them down the board and making a queen, or stopping them if your opponent has them. For instance, here, this was a fictional position from the movie Searching for Bobby Fischer, where the players started banging out moves, knight d7, check, knight takes e5, and both players started smashing their passed pawns forward, one after the other, one after the other, one after the other, and finally Black ended up winning with the skewer at the end. And this was very dramatized, and this is Hollywood, and this was geared towards a general audience as opposed to an audience that actually knows chess. But in fact, this position was actually just a draw. King takes e5 was a mistake. White should have played h5 instead and not bothered with this knight. And after a5, it doesn't really matter. This knight can't stop the pawn. For instance, something like this, a4. And say king f6. If we play a3 takes, and here, now in fact it's even white who wins the race, although after king b1 it's still a technical draw. But essentially I found that there's a whole lot more to passed pawns and how they color the way a position is seen. That passed pawns can be present in the middle game where they don't present a serious danger of becoming a queen on their own. They can be present in the endgame where the races are everything. And there's certainly a fair amount of pawn racing and pawn promotion in this book, as you might expect about a book with passed pawns. But there are a lot of things I learned while analyzing the games that I put in this book that you wouldn't have really been intuitive to me. Like, just to give a small teaser, it hadn't really occurred to me that in the middle game, the best way to queen a lone passed pawn is almost always to attack the king, which feels completely unrelated, but as you'll see when you get to that chapter, is absolutely the case. And I really learned a lot about this stuff, and I found that passed pawns are a very complex topic, and while certainly there are some cases that just involve both sides shoving their pawns down the board, see who gets there first, or see who can stop the pawn and who can't, that tends to be the exception rather than the rule. And I found that there's a lot of very interesting positions where some of these same principles I've come up with, and if you've read Small Steps 1 or done the video course or whatnot, you've definitely seen the guidelines that I've come up with and sort of the form they take. I've come up with a whole new set of them to deal with passed pawns. And I've definitely found that for the most part, they tend to hold true, and they can really help you out. In addition, you'll see, like, while this game was clearly Hollywood and fiction, if you take an actual chess game that was really played, this was the game between... This was the Labordonnais game where he queened all the pawns. This game is part of chess culture. I think almost every serious chess player will have seen this, where Black just smashes his pawn straight through. He sacrifices everything. Queen e1, rook c1, d2. And after queen c5, he stops the mate threat. Rook g1, rook d1, e3. e2 is coming, queen c3. And I guess now of e2, there will follow some taking here, although of course it's still completely lost after takes and queen. But... just to be flashy, it seems, after takes an e2, we have a very picturesque final position where white has a queen for just a bishop and a couple pawns, but these pawns obviously are winning the game. And flashy as this may be, again, I'm finding that there's so much more to playing with passed pawns and playing against them than this. And I certainly did my best over the course of this video series in this book and everything I've done here with Chessable as well as with Quality Chess, to shed as much light as I can on the concept of passed pawns, how they should be played with, how they should be played up against, and the ways in which they are similar in the middle game, passed pawns in the middle game versus passed pawns in the end game, the way they are similar, the way they are different. There's a lot of stuff to uncover, and I'm quite happy and satisfied with what I've done. And I certainly, of course, only time will tell if this will improve my chess later, and only time will tell if other people enjoy it, and obviously my opinion isn't the one that counts for that. But I certainly did my best, and if to anyone who places enough faith in me to buy my books or my video course, I certainly wish you all